The cold drizzle blurred the windshield as I sat in the car, staring through the glass at the funeral home. People were still arriving. Umbrellas, solemn faces, hushed voices. None of them knew the truth. Not about my wife, not about my son, not about the man she replaced me with. Her name was Lauren. When we met, I thought I'd found peace. She was smart, charming in a way that didn't scream for attention but demanded it quietly. We weren't the same kind of people. I built things with my hands, worked for a logistics company, rose through sheer effort. She, on the other hand, came from a family where names opened doors before anyone asked what you brought to the table. And yet, we clicked. Or so I thought. Our son, Nathan, came 2 years after the wedding. I remember holding him in the hospital, her hand gripping mine, eyes filled with something real. Or maybe that's what I wanted to see. Now she was dead. At least, that's what the world believed. I stepped out of the car. My brother Mark met me near the steps, his face tense. "You sure about this?" he asked. I nodded. "She wanted this service. I'm just fulfilling her last wish." He didn't press further. No one could. Because if I told them the truth, they'd call me insane. The truth. Lauren was very much alive, and she was standing in another city, holding our son in her arms, introducing a man named Bradley Monroe as her husband. My rival. The same man she swore she hated. The same man who once told me years ago, "She'll come to me eventually. They always do." I clenched my jaw as I walked into the chapel. They called it a tragic car accident. No body was recovered, just the wreckage. Enough to convince the insurance company, the police, her own mother. But I knew better. Because I found the hidden flight booking she made 2 days before the accident. Because the seat beside hers was booked under the name Bradley M. Because I found her necklace in his apartment when I broke in 2 nights ago. And now, I was at my own wife's funeral, mourning a woman who chose another life, another man, abandoning her husband, her son. The eulogies passed in a blur, and words spoken by people who only saw the version of Lauren she allowed them to. I kept my face stone cold, because if I let one emotion break through, it would unravel everything. When it was my turn to speak, I walked to the podium, took a deep breath, and said the line I'd been rehearsing in my mind for days. "My wife, Lauren," I paused, letting silence settle, "is gone. But not in the way you think." The room tensed. People looked up. I buried her long before this accident, when the woman I loved turned into someone I couldn't recognize. I didn't say more. I didn't need to. The storm I'd just unleashed would echo for days. Later, as I stood by the coffin that held only ashes from an unrelated fire, I whispered, "You wanted freedom. You got it. But you'll regret thinking I'd walk away quietly. Because she made one mistake. She let me live. I didn't go home after the funeral. Home didn't mean anything anymore. The house was a hollow shell, every photo on the wall a lie, every memory a trick. Instead, I drove aimlessly until the gas tank blinked red, then pulled into a cheap motel 2 towns over. I needed time. I needed distance. Mark called 3 times. I didn't pick up. He meant well, but he wouldn't understand. No one would. To the world, I was a grieving widower. To me, I was a man burned alive in the wreckage of a marriage I never saw collapsing until it was too late. That night, I sat on the edge of the motel bed, flipping through the photos I'd printed, grainy, black and white shots from the cheap spy camera I'd hidden in the apartment across from Bradley Monroe's penthouse. There she was, Lauren. My Lauren, wearing a silk robe I didn't recognize, pouring wine, smiling like nothing in the world had ever hurt her. Nathan toddled into the frame. My breath caught. He was clutching a stuffed bear I'd given him for his 3rd birthday. I could still hear his tiny voice calling it Mr. Paw. She knelt beside him, scooping him up into her arms. He laughed. That sound. It nearly destroyed me. Did he remember me at all? Had she told him I was dead too? I zoomed in on Bradley. He sat on the couch, his arm draped lazily over the backrest, watching them with a smug little smirk. The same smirk he wore years ago when we both worked under the same contractor in Phoenix. The same smirk he had when I got promoted instead of him. Bradley always hated losing. And now? Now he had everything he wanted. My wife, my son, my life. But there was one thing he didn't know. I'd installed a tracker in the stuffed bear. Not out of paranoia. Back then, it was a protective dad's instinct. Something to keep tabs if the worst ever happened. Well, the worst had happened. The tracker pinged 2 nights ago. That's how I found them. The address was a high-rise in downtown Charlotte. Expensive, private, guarded by a doorman. But I'd been inside once, pretending to be a maintenance worker. That's how I got the camera in. That's how I knew she was alive. I wasn't sure what hurt more. That she ran, or that she took Nathan and let him believe another man was his father. The next morning, I sat in the motel's tiny breakfast nook, my laptop open, cross-referencing addresses and surveillance footage. I needed more. I needed a plan. Then a message popped up on my phone, from a number I didn't recognize. "You shouldn't have come to the funeral. You're playing a game you'll lose." No name, no context. But I knew who it was. Bradley. He wanted me to back off, to accept the narrative. Too late. I texted back. "You've already lost. You just don't know it yet." He didn't reply. Instead, I got an email. Anonymous sender, but clearly someone watching me. Attached was a photo. Me, standing at the gravesite, Mark beside me, a few others blurred in the background. Someone was watching, tracking me too. They were getting nervous. That was good. I opened another folder on my desktop. Inside, Lauren's financial records. She thought deleting them would be enough. She didn't realize I'd already cloned her hard drive 2 months before the accident, when I started to suspect she was hiding something. Wire transfers, shell companies, fake IDs. The planning went back over a year. I should have seen it. I would see everything now. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about Nathan. And I'd do whatever it took to bring him home. I hadn't spoken to Mark in nearly a week. Not since the funeral. But now I needed him. He was the only one who knew enough of the old Lauren to see how far she'd fallen. He might not believe the whole truth, but I hoped he believed enough. He picked up on the 3rd ring. "You alive?" His voice was dry, sharp. That was his way of showing concern. "I need your help," I said. "And I need you not to ask too many questions right now." A pause. "You sound like hell." "Yeah," I muttered. "Because I've been through it." Another pause. Then, "Where?" We met at a diner on the edge of town, the kind with vinyl booths and stale coffee. Mark was already seated, arms crossed, eyes locked on me like he was trying to read my soul. I slid a manila folder across the table. Inside were copies of the documents I'd pulled from Lauren's old laptop. Transfers, passport scans, her new alias, Lena Marlowe. He flipped through them slowly. His expression didn't change. Then he said, "Jesus Christ. She's alive," I said. "Living in Charlotte. With him and with Nathan." "Bradley?" Mark blinked hard. "The guy from Phoenix? I thought you told me he moved to Chicago. Guess he changed his mind once he got my wife." Mark didn't say anything. He just stared at the table like the wood grain had the answers. Finally, he looked up. "What do you need from me?" "Help me prove she's alive. Legally. Before she files anything that makes it impossible for me to get Nathan back." Mark let out a breath. "You're not thinking straight. You just buried her. To the world, she's dead." "I buried a lie," I said coldly, "and now I'm going to dig it up." He stared at me for a long time before nodding. "All right, but you need more than me. You need someone who knows how to navigate this kind of storm." Which is how I found myself 3 hours later in the office of a woman named Denise Keller. Denise wasn't your average lawyer. She specialized in unwinding false deaths, custody reversals, and asset recovery in cases where one spouse had faked identity or fraudulently vanished. She wore a gray suit, no makeup, and her voice had the kind of calm that made you nervous. "You understand what you're alleging," she said after I laid it all out. "You're accusing your wife of committing fraud, kidnapping your son, and staging her own death. Do you have any physical proof that she's alive beyond surveillance photos?" I have a tracker in my son's bear, I said. I can show you where she's been for the last 10 days. I can even get you video. Denise leaned back, fingertips pressed together. Surveillance footage without consent is dicey, but in a private custody matter, it's admissible if it protects the welfare of the child. That gave me some hope. But here's the problem, she continued. The death certificate, the insurance payout, the funeral. You participated in the deception, knowingly or not. If this goes to court, you may look complicit. My jaw tightened. I didn't know until after the crash. She staged it all. And can you prove that? She asked. I didn't answer. Then you'd better be damn careful, she said. Because once you go public, you don't control the story anymore. They will spin you as the villain, the dangerous ex, the grieving husband who snapped. That hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't just fighting for Nathan. I was fighting against an illusion, and illusions had a way of becoming truth in courtrooms and headlines. Still, I asked the question I'd come for. What do I need to bring my son home? Denise hesitated, then said, You need to catch her in person, on record, alive with the child. If she's using a fake identity, get her using it. If she's cashing checks, get the transaction history, anything that proves she's willfully hiding. It sounded impossible, but it wasn't, because tomorrow, according to the tracker, Nathan's bear was moving again. They were traveling, and wherever they went, I'd be there, watching, waiting, because now I had a lawyer, I had my brother, and I had nothing left to lose. They were headed to Asheville. The tracker and Nathan's stuffed bear pinged just after dawn. I sat in my car parked outside the motel, engine idling, laptop open on the passenger seat. The signal moved slowly along the highway, Interstate 40, westbound, a black dot creeping toward the mountains. I'd expected them to run, but not to someplace like Asheville, too public, too artsy, too exposed, unless they thought no one would think to look there. Or maybe they were just overconfident. Denise warned me not to get too close. You want this admissible, she'd said, not emotional. But she didn't know what it felt like. Watching your son slip further away, seeing another man teach him how to smile. I waited 3 hours before I left. Enough time to let them settle. I wasn't going in blind. I had a plan. By late afternoon, I was outside a high-end Airbnb near the Biltmore estate, an ivy-wrapped villa with private gates and panoramic views. I saw them arrive through my lens. Bradley first, stepping out of the SUV with practiced ease, phone in one hand, the other gesturing to the property manager. Then Lauren. She wore sunglasses, a white scarf wrapped around her head like some old Hollywood starlet avoiding the press. But I knew that face, even in profile. And then Nathan. His little legs dangled from the car seat as Lauren pulled him out, cradling him close. He wore a red hoodie, one I'd bought him. I took a breath and started filming. No hesitation, no second thoughts. Just quiet, steady hands and the weight of purpose pressing against my ribs. 2 days passed. I rented a room in a cheap lodge down the road, ate diner food, slept maybe 4 hours in total, but I watched. They went to the aquarium, a bookstore, even a kid's puppet theater. Everywhere they went, they acted like a family, like they had nothing to hide. Until the third night. I saw something that made my stomach twist. Bradley lifted Nathan onto his lap inside the villa's glass-walled sunroom. Lauren leaned down and said something. I couldn't hear through the mic, but I could read lips well enough. Say it again, baby. Nathan looked up and mumbled something. She smiled wide. Bradley grinned. Then Nathan said it louder. Daddy. I dropped the camera. The word echoed in my mind like a gunshot. Bradley. Daddy. It was like a switch flipped inside me. Not rage, not grief. Something colder, sharper, resolve. She was trying to erase me. I drove straight back to town that night and found a guy Denise had warned me about, Milo Ward. He wasn't a lawyer. He wasn't even fully licensed in much of anything. But he was ex-private security, former military intel, and had one specialty, digital exposure, blackmail, insurance fraud, asset manipulation. He'd seen it all. I handed him the footage. I need to make sure the right people see this, when I say so. Not before. He nodded once. You want leverage? Exactly. I can set up a dead man's trigger, If something happens to you or if she tries anything, the footage goes live. Social media, legal inboxes, state bar, CPS. Do it, I said. He looked up. You sure you want this war going public? I didn't blink. She declared war the day she let my son call another man daddy. He nodded again and got to work. Back at the motel, I stared at a photo I'd taken on my phone. Nathan in Bradley's arms, a plastic sword in one hand, laughing. Then I opened another folder, labeled Past. Inside were the first signs of decay. A message Lauren sent me 2 years ago that I ignored. A missed anniversary dinner. A week she disappeared to visit her mother, but had secretly flown to Denver. Pieces of the puzzle I hadn't known I was holding. How long had she planned this? How much of our marriage had been real? And why, above everything else, had she chosen him? That was the last thread I couldn't pull free, the one that still itched beneath the skin. Bradley had been a rival, sure, but something deeper bound them, something I hadn't yet uncovered. But I would. I hadn't planned on seeing her face to face so soon. But fate, or something close to it, forced our first collision. It was a Wednesday afternoon, overcast and cool. I was watching from across the street while Lauren and Nathan browsed a local farmer's market. I kept my distance. Hat pulled low, hoodie up. A camera in my pocket streamed live to Milo's secure drive. Lauren was relaxed, moving from booth to booth with practiced charm. Bradley wasn't with them, probably confident no one would dare disrupt their mountain hideaway. Nathan had jam on his cheeks. He was holding a balloon shaped like a dinosaur. A woman selling wildflowers handed him a sunflower. He giggled and said something I couldn't hear, but it made Lauren laugh. Then she looked up. Our eyes met. I froze. A second passed, maybe 2. And in that moment, I saw her brain working. Denial, confusion, realization, then calculation. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She turned to Nathan and said something calm, knelt beside him, and pointed at a fruit stand. He trotted off ahead. She stood, straightened her coat, then walked toward me. 5 feet away, close enough to slap me. She didn't. She stopped and said, "You're supposed to be grieving." I was, I replied, until I realized the person I buried never existed. She tilted her head slightly, eyes narrowing. I knew you'd come eventually. I told Bradley this wasn't over. I scoffed. You're living in a fantasy. You think you can just erase me? Her lips curled into something between a smirk and a sneer. You were erasing yourself long before I ever left. You just didn't notice. You left your son. I took our son away from a man who never saw what was right in front of him. The audacity of her tone made my skin crawl. She spoke with the conviction of someone who believed her own lies. He called him Daddy, I said low. Do you think that's going to hold in court? Her expression didn't change, but I saw something flicker behind her eyes. I don't think anything will hold in court, because this won't make it there. You're unwell, remember? Obsessed, grieving, delusional. So that was her angle. Paint me as unstable. She was already laying the groundwork. You don't get to rewrite the story, I said. Not when I've got the original script. You think filming us from a motel room will win you a case? You think a judge won't laugh you out of the room when they see what you've become? I think Nathan deserves the truth. That hit her harder than anything else I'd said. For a fraction of a second, her mouth parted like she might respond, like something real was buried deep beneath her armor. But then it was gone. You have no idea what I've sacrificed, she said, voice tight. Then tell me, I said. Explain why you blew up our lives for him. Why Bradley? But she stepped back. Enjoy your little surveillance game, but you've already lost. You just don't know it yet. She turned and walked back to Nathan, picked him up like nothing had happened. He looked back once, but not at me. At the sunflower he dropped on the ground. They left, and I stood there, with the taste of rust in my mouth and my heart pounding like a war drum. That night I sent Denise the footage. The entire encounter. Clear facial recognition, vocal exchange. Lauren alive and speaking under her real name. She called me 30 minutes later. This is good, she said. This gives us options. I leaned forward in my chair. Like what? I can send this to the DA, file a fraud inquiry, petition for emergency custody proceedings. But the moment I pull that trigger, they'll come after you, with everything they've got. I looked at the paused frame on my laptop. Lauren's face, defiant, confident, untouchable. Pull it, I said. Denise hesitated, then understood. She hung up, and I knew the clock had started ticking, not just for Lauren, but for me too. Because she was right about one thing. This story would end in court, or in ruin. The legal notice went out on a Friday. Denise filed the emergency petition in the county where Nathan was last legally registered, under our joint address, and included the footage, financial evidence, and my sworn statement. It was precise, brutal, and airtight. And just like that, the walls Lauren built started to crack, but cracks don't go unnoticed. By Monday morning, 3 things happened. First, my bank account was frozen. A pending audit, the message said, courtesy of a flag from a private fraud investigator hired anonymously. Denise traced it back to one of the shell companies Lauren had created. She was hitting me where it hurt. Money, stability, reputation. Second, I received a cease and desist letter from Bradley's legal team, accusing me of harassment, stalking, and emotional endangerment to a minor. The irony nearly made me laugh. They were accusing me of endangering my own son. And third, Child Protective Services knocked on my door. 2 agents. 2, calm, professional, with clipboards and polite smiles that meant nothing. We received a concern, one of them said. Allegations of erratic behavior, emotional instability, and threats made in proximity to a minor. They questioned me for an hour, asked if I had firearms in the house, asked if I'd recently suffered a mental episode, asked if I was aware that my deceased wife had recently been reported alive by me. I showed them the footage, the timestamps, the tracker data. They didn't comment on any of it. When they left, I sat on the couch for a long time, staring at the blank wall where our family photos used to hang. Lauren was fast, strategic, ruthless. She wasn't playing defense. She was erasing me from the map. And if I didn't outmaneuver her soon, she'd win. Later that night, Denise called. Her voice was tense. She's already filed a counter-petition, she said, claiming you've fabricated evidence, manipulated digital records, and that you're a danger to the child. She's asking for full legal custody under the grounds of abandonment, mental unfitness, and prior emotional abuse. My grip on the phone tightened. She's lying. I know, Denise said. But if she gets to a judge first, the narrative becomes hers to shape. We need more. Something irrefutable. I paused. Like what? Like a witness. Someone close to her. Someone who's seen what she's done and is willing to talk. My mind went to the one name I hadn't said aloud in years. Kara, Lauren's old friend, her college roommate. The only person she ever trusted outside family. The only one who saw her without the mask. We hadn't spoken since before the wedding. Kara had distanced herself after a fight with Lauren that neither of them would explain. But I remembered her face at the reception, forced smile, tight eyes, and the way she hugged me goodbye, whispering, "You don't know what she's capable of." Back then, I chalked it up to drama, jealousy, misunderstanding. Now, I wasn't so sure. I found her through a mutual friend on social media. She lived in Raleigh now, about 3 hours east. I messaged her, told her it was urgent, that it was about Lauren. She replied in 10 minutes. I was wondering when you'd finally see her for who she is. Let's talk. I drove through the night. Kara met me at a coffee shop near her apartment. She looked different. Older maybe, but clearer somehow. Like someone who'd been through fire and come out wiser for it. She sat down and got right to the point. I know why she chose Bradley, Kara said. Because he was the one who helped her hide the first time. I blinked. What do you mean, first time? Kara's eyes were hard. Lauren faked a pregnancy in college, claimed it was mine, used it to manipulate a professor into giving her a passing grade. When it started to unravel, she ran, disappeared for a week. Bradley was the only one who knew where she went. He helped her vanish then, just like now. I leaned back. The puzzle pieces started snapping into place. "They've been doing this for years," Kara said. "He's her cleaner, her fixer, maybe her puppet, maybe her master. I don't know. But what I do know is she doesn't care about Nathan. She cares about control, and right now she's using your son as leverage." Kara pulled out a flash drive. "Before she cut ties with me, she bragged about keeping backups, audio clips, messages, insurance in case anyone ever tried to burn her. I kept copies." I took the flash drive in shaking hands. "This could change everything," I said. She nodded. "It will, but be careful. She's more dangerous when she's cornered." I knew that already, and we were both running out of corners to hide in. The first file on Kara's flash drive was just audio. Scratchy, recorded years ago, probably a phone call. Lauren's voice, unmistakable. Smooth, amused, calculating. "Bradley's a hammer. You just have to point him at the nail. He'll do anything if you make him feel like it was his idea." Denise listened with headphones, notebook in hand, her jaw slowly tightening with each second. Another clip. "So, what if I fake something? People fake things all the time. Car crashes, pregnancies, breakups. It's only illegal if you get caught." Then another, colder. "Nathan's my leverage. He's what keeps the story from falling apart." That last one hit me like a gut punch. Denise stopped the recording. "This changes the nature of the case. She's no longer just a fraudster. This is premeditated custodial interference, possibly criminal." She leaned forward. "We file for an emergency evidentiary hearing. Present this directly to a judge. If he grants it, we force her to respond, under oath, with the risk of perjury." "What are the odds she folds before it gets that far?" I asked. "None," she said bluntly. "She's invested. She'll burn every bridge before she gives up control." I nodded. "Then light the first match." It took 2 days to prep the motion. During that time, I tried to get some rest. I kept thinking about Nathan, wondering what she was telling him now. Was she planting more lies? Saying I was dangerous? That I never wanted him? That thought nearly drove me mad. I texted Kara just to check in. No response. I waited an hour, then called. Still nothing. By evening, I drove to Raleigh. Her apartment building was quiet. No sign of her car. When I knocked on her door, there was no answer. I peered through the peephole. No lights on. Something felt wrong. I went to the front desk. The manager, a young guy with tired eyes, shrugged when I asked. "She checked out early this morning, said she had a family emergency." I stared at him. "She has no family in the state." He blinked. "Well," she seemed in a hurry. My pulse quickened. I left immediately and called Denise. "She's gone?" "I don't think she ran," I said. "I think Lauren got to her." There was a pause. Then, "That makes her even more dangerous." Back at my motel, Milo was waiting. He'd been monitoring online chatter and found something strange. "Bradley's suddenly gone quiet," he said. "Deleted his socials, stopped using his business email. Looks like he's preparing for something." I frowned. "Or hiding something." Milo nodded. "I also pulled hospital records. Lauren had a consultation with a private physician in Atlanta 3 months ago, prepaid. Under her alias, Lena Marlowe." "What kind of consultation?" He paused. "Fertility." I stared at him. "She's planning for the future," he said grimly. "With or without you in it." I didn't speak. I couldn't. The woman I thought I married was gone. In her place was someone methodical, cold, and 2 steps ahead. Later that night, I received a voicemail. Unknown number. The voice was disguised, but the words were clear. "Drop the case. Walk away, or next time you won't find just an empty apartment." I played it twice before forwarding it to Denise and Milo. Milo didn't blink. "We're in deep now." Denise simply said, "That's a threat. And it works in our favor, if we survive long enough to use it." The next morning, the judge reviewed our motion. After hours of deliberation, we got the call. He granted the emergency evidentiary hearing. A summons would be served to Lauren in 72 hours. It was finally happening. But all I could think about was Kara. Where was she? Was she okay? Or had Lauren decided one witness was one too many? I sat alone in my car, watching the sunrise bleed across the clouds like a wound reopening. One war was ending, but another was just beginning. And I wasn't sure either of us would come out clean on the other side. The courthouse was pale and lifeless in the morning fog, just another concrete mausoleum with too many secrets buried in its walls. I sat in the hallway outside courtroom 3B, flanked by Denise on one side and Milo on the other. A deputy paced near the door. Cameras weren't allowed, but Milo kept a backup recorder under his jacket anyway, just in case. The summons had been delivered to Lauren's address in Charlotte 72 hours ago. Official service, certified. No room to claim she hadn't received it. Still, the room in front of us was empty. No sign of her. No Bradley. No Nathan. Denise glanced at the wall clock. They have 10 more minutes before the judge moves forward without them. If they're smart, Milo muttered, they're already on a plane. No, I said, jaw locked. She's too arrogant to run before the performance. She wants to win, legally, publicly, like always. I wasn't wrong. At precisely 9:47, the courtroom doors opened. Lauren walked in wearing a black pencil skirt, white blouse, and subtle pearls. Beside her, a lean, gray-suited attorney I didn't recognize, carrying a tablet instead of a briefcase. She didn't look at me, not even a glance. The hearing began. The judge, a tired, meticulous man named Dyer, asked for opening remarks. Denise stood and laid everything out with surgical clarity. The death fraud, the false identity, the relocation without consent, and the systematic attempt to destroy the father's relationship with his son. Then she played the audio recordings, Lauren's voice clear and cutting. Nathan's my leverage. Bradley's a hammer. It's only illegal if you get caught. Dyer raised an eyebrow but said nothing. He simply scribbled notes. Lauren's attorney rose. Smooth, charming, dangerous. He claimed the recordings were illegally obtained, claimed the voice was deep-faked, claimed I was delusional and had manipulated a troubled ex-friend into lying. He even tried to invoke Kara's sudden disappearance as proof that I was unstable. That one almost made me laugh. But Denise stayed calm. She presented receipts, digital logs, timestamps, and Kara's notarized affidavit, recorded days before she vanished. Then the judge asked Lauren to speak. She stood, composed, and looked at him like she was auditioning for sainthood. I admit I left, she said softly. I was scared. Of him, of his anger, of what it might do to our son. I faked my death because I didn't know what else to do. And I regret it, Your Honor. But I did what I thought was best for Nathan. She turned toward the judge, finally looked him in the eyes. He's unstable. He's obsessive. He's been following me for weeks, hiding cameras, tracking my son's toys. That's not the act of a loving father. That's the act of a man on the edge. She turned, just slightly, and looked at me. He's not safe. I didn't move, didn't blink. But every word she spoke twisted in my gut. Because the more lies she told, the more it reminded me of the woman I never truly knew. The judge recessed for deliberation. 30 minutes of pacing, breathing, drinking cheap courthouse water from a wax cup. Then he called us back. He granted the emergency order. Full temporary custody transferred to me. Nathan would be removed from Lauren's care pending a full custody trial. A week from now. I should have felt relief, victory, something. But when I looked over at Lauren, I saw her lips curl into a faint smile. Not panic, not fear, satisfaction. As if this had all been part of her plan. We left the courthouse under escort. Denise's contacts in the sheriff's office helped arrange temporary protection until Nathan could be retrieved. But Lauren was already gone. Disappeared the moment the judge gavelled the hearing closed. Milo made calls, checked flights, border alerts. Nothing. That night we found Bradley's car abandoned at an airport parking garage in Charleston. The last transaction on Lauren's known accounts was a hotel room on the edge of Savannah, booked under a third alias. They were on the run, and they had Nathan. Denise stayed calm, issuing federal alerts, notifying U.S. Marshals. Milo coordinated surveillance around train stations and ports. But deep down, I knew this would be a race, not for custody, for my son's life, his truth, his identity, his future. Because Lauren wasn't running out of desperation, She was running because she never intended to stay still. And for the first time in weeks, I realized she never planned to lose. Not this, not him, not ever. The marshals called me just after dawn. They'd located a black SUV matching Lauren's last known vehicle, found parked at a rest stop in South Georgia. No fingerprints, no belongings. Clean. Too clean. She was shedding identities like skin. Milo patched into nearby traffic cams. One frame caught her face. Blurred, grainy, but it was her. She was wearing a blonde wig, oversized sunglasses, and holding Nathan's hand. He looked tired, small, too small. It broke me. By now, the Amber Alert had gone national. Lauren was officially listed as a fugitive wanted for custodial interference. Her image, doctored and undistorted, ran on news sites. But none of that seemed to slow her down. Milo called in a contact, ex-federal, now running private counter-surveillance. They tracked a burner phone signal connected to a known alias Lauren had used before. It pinged once in Pensacola, then vanished. She's changing devices every city, Milo said. She's not improvising. She's following a pre-built escape route. Denise was already pushing a federal motion for recovery jurisdiction. CPS backed our case, finally seeing through Lauren's lies. But paperwork wasn't fast enough. None of it mattered if Nathan was across the border before the ink dried. That night, I sat alone in the motel room, staring at the last photo I had of Nathan. Not from the cameras, not from surveillance, just a normal day, long before all this. He was holding a toy truck and grinning like nothing in the world could ever go wrong. And now he was in the back seat of a getaway car, his name erased, his father listed as unstable. The guilt came in waves. I should have acted sooner. I should have confronted her before the funeral. I should have... But it was too late for shoulds. Denise called. She'll try to cross somewhere rural. Private airfield, maybe a boat. Airports are too hot right now. Milo confirmed it. We found a transaction. Cash, anonymous, through a contact in Mobile. One-way ferry charter to the Yucatan. No customs. She's taking him to Mexico? I asked. Milo nodded. And if she gets there, we may never get him back. I drove through the night, Milo beside me. Denise coordinated from a distance, alerting contacts at the port and dispatching local marshals. We reached the dock just before sunrise. A faded vessel sat at the end of the pier. Twin engines, private crew, no markings. A man in a worn hat checked a clipboard, his face going pale when Milo showed his badge. He tried to lie, said he didn't know anything. But we found the logbook, Lauren's alias. A woman and child scheduled to board at 6 a.m. It was 5:57. I ran down the pier, and there she was, Lauren, holding Nathan's hand, his tiny backpack slung over one shoulder. She turned at the sound of my footsteps, and for the first time, her face changed. Not calm, not smug, but panicked. Don't, she hissed. You don't understand what you're doing. Let him go. He's mine. He's ours. You don't get to erase me. You don't get to take him and start over like none of this happened. Nathan looked between us, confused, scared. Mommy, what's happening? He asked. Lauren tightened her grip. It's okay, sweetie, we're just... I stepped closer. Nathan, I said quietly, do you remember me? He hesitated, then slowly nodded. Your daddy. The word was small, fragile, but real. Lauren froze. The marshals arrived seconds later, guns drawn, voices loud, bodies moving between us. She didn't fight. She didn't cry. She just let go of his hand. Nathan ran to me, and I held him like I would never let go again. Lauren was arrested on the spot, charged with custodial interference, fraud, and obstruction. Her face was blank as they cuffed her. Not a tear, not a word. Only when they read her the charges did she whisper something I barely heard. I almost made it. The first night Nathan spent back with me, he didn't speak much. He clutched Mr. Paw, the same stuffed bear I'd slipped the tracker into months ago, and sat curled on the edge of the motel bed, eyes watching the door like he expected someone to take him again. I tried to smile, keep it light. Asked if he wanted his favorite cereal, Even offered to show him the toy trucks I'd stored in the back of my closet at home. He nodded, politely, but there was distance in his eyes. Not confusion, not fear, just uncertainty. The kind you see in kids who've been told one version of reality and are now trying to process another. I didn't push. Instead, I let the silence be. The next morning, he followed me into the kitchen without prompting. He looked up. Is Mommy going to jail? I froze. How do you explain betrayal to a 6-year-old? How do you tell your son the woman who once kissed his forehead every night before bed manipulated him into believing lies about the man standing in front of him now? She made some bad choices, I said slowly, and now she has to answer for them. He nodded again. She said you left us, that you didn't want me anymore. My chest tightened. That's not true, not even a little. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he whispered, But you came. That broke something inside me. I knelt, arms around him as he finally started to cry, not out of fear, but from all the confusion spilling out at once. We stayed like that until the sun came up over the window blinds. Denise arranged for a trauma counselor to meet with us within 48 hours. CPS required it as part of the reunification process, but I would have done it anyway. Nathan needed space to speak without fear. The counselor's name was Dr. Banner. Kind eyes, calm voice. She met with Nathan privately, then asked me to join them. Your son isn't damaged, she said, but he's been taught to see the world through Lauren's lens. It'll take time, but kids are resilient, especially when they feel safe again. Nathan glanced at me. I feel safe now. Those 4 words did more than any legal victory. Meanwhile, Lauren was booked without bail. Her arraignment was scheduled for the following week. Denise warned me the trial could take months, maybe longer, but we weren't waiting. Denise filed a full custody petition, backed by federal findings and CPS testimony. With Lauren's charges, the chances of her regaining even visitation were slim. Still, I couldn't stop thinking about what she'd said at the dock. I almost made it. Made what? A new life? A world where I never existed? I asked Milo to dig deeper. He did. 3 years ago, Bradley registered an offshore trust under a Cayman shell corporation. Lauren was listed as the beneficiary. The goal wasn't just to run, it was to recreate everything from the ground up. New names, new passports, a quiet villa in Belize under fake documentation. They were going to start a new family. Nathan wasn't just leverage, he was the foundation of her rewrite. And if I hadn't found them at that pier, I don't let my mind go there. Bradley, for his part, hadn't been seen since Charleston. Milo believed he'd crossed into Cuba by private vessel. The feds issued a warrant, but without extradition, he was untouchable, for now. The silence from Kara ended 2 days later. A postcard. No return address, just 2 words. Still breathing. I showed it to Denise. She only nodded. Let her go. She gave us enough. And she had. Weeks passed. Slowly, Nathan started to laugh again. He asked questions. He wanted to watch his favorite cartoons, play outside. And one night, as we sat on the couch, he leaned against me and whispered, Can we stay like this? Yeah, buddy, I said. We're home now. The courtroom was colder than I remembered. Or maybe I was just more alert this time. 3 weeks had passed since the pier. Enough time for Nathan to start sleeping through the night again. Enough time for me to stop checking the locks 3 times before bed. Now we were here. The custody hearing. The final one. Denise had prepared everything with the kind of precision that comes only from rage sharpened into professionalism. She'd submitted every document, every piece of audio, every surveillance still. She'd prepped me for cross-examination like a soldier before a war. Lauren entered the courtroom in handcuffs. No makeup. Prison gray jumpsuit. Her eyes locked on mine once. Empty, unreadable, and then drifted to the judge. She didn't look at Nathan. He was seated with Dr. Banner in a private observation room just down the hall, where the court allowed child-friendly monitoring. Denise had fought hard for that. Nathan didn't need to relive this in real time. I took the stand. I told the story. Not just about the chase, not just the fraud, but the nights I'd spent wondering why my wife slept with her phone hidden under the pillow, the missed calls, the strange business trips. The betrayal wasn't a sharp stab. It was a slow bleed. I wasn't a perfect husband, I said, but I was present. I worked. I loved my son, and I believed in our marriage until the moment I found out it was never really ours. Lauren's attorney asked the expected questions. Did I install a tracker? Yes. Did I hide a camera? Yes. Did I break into Bradley's apartment? Yes. I didn't deny any of it. I was desperate, I said, but I never stopped being a father. Then they called Lauren. Her voice was even, polished, almost robotic. I feared for my safety. I feared for my child's well-being. That's why I left. She recited it like a script, as if by rehearsing it enough times, it would become true. But then came the breaking point. Denise produced a printout, Lauren's application for a new birth certificate filed under Nathan's false name in Belize. It was signed, notarized, and stamped. You weren't just protecting your son, Denise said. You were erasing his identity. Lauren's jaw tightened. That's not what that was. You intended to make him someone else. He would have been safe. Safe from what? Denise leaned forward. His real life. His real father? Silence. For the first time, Lauren didn't answer. The judge recessed for deliberation. 40 minutes passed like 40 days. Then, at last, the ruling, full, permanent custody awarded to me. All parental rights stripped from Lauren pending the outcome of her criminal trial. No contact, no visitation, no letters. When the verdict was read, Lauren didn't react. She didn't flinch. She simply turned toward the window and stared at the gray sky. Denise whispered, "It's over." But it didn't feel like victory. Not exactly. It felt like the closing of a door that had never led anywhere good. Outside the courthouse, I met Nathan in the hallway. Dr. Banner gave me a subtle nod, then stepped back. He looked up at me, eyes wide, unsure. I knelt. "It's done, buddy. You're staying with me, for good." He hugged me, fierce, solid. And in that moment, for the first time since this began, I truly believed we might be okay. That night, we had pancakes for dinner. He picked the movie, something about robots and dragons, and fell asleep on my shoulder before the credits rolled. The storm had passed, but I knew Lauren wasn't the only shadow left. Bradley was still out there, and he wouldn't stay silent forever. I hadn't heard Bradley's name in over a month, not from the courts, not from the marshals, not even from Milo, who usually monitored the dark web like a hawk. It was like he had ceased to exist. But ghosts don't stay buried forever. It started with an envelope, no return address. Slipped under my front door late one night while Nathan and I were asleep. Inside, one photo, a man in a dark coat standing outside a playground. Nathan was in the background sitting on a swing. The photo wasn't new, it had to be weeks old. But the message was loud and clear. He was watching. I handed the envelope to Milo the next morning. He examined the paper, the ink, the timestamp on the photo. No fingerprints, he said. It was printed on high-grade matte stock. Professional stuff. Bradley? I asked. Milo didn't answer immediately. He just handed me his phone and showed me a redacted incident report. 3 days prior, a known associate of Bradley Monroe had been found dead in a hotel in the Dominican Republic. No sign of struggle, no theft, no witnesses. Cause of death, undetermined. Milo lowered his voice. He's cleaning up loose ends. I clenched my fists. You think I'm one of them? I think you're the only thread he can't cut cleanly. Because you're public now. You're a father with court records, legal custody, and media attention. You're fire. But Nathan's not. Milo didn't respond. That night I told Denise everything. She didn't flinch. She called a judge and requested a temporary protective order for both me and Nathan. Then she arranged for a sheriff's deputy to do periodic drive-bys and flagged both our names on flight watch lists. We're not panicking, she said, but we're not pretending either. The next day I moved Nathan out of school and into a private tutoring pod set up in a local community center. Smaller group, more secure. He didn't like it at first, missed his friends, missed the big playground. But he didn't complain when I explained that it was just for now. Just until everything was safe. The second sign came a week later. An email. No sender. Encrypted. You took everything from her. She gave you her name, her home, her trust, and you turned it to ash. Attached was a scanned page, Lauren's journal, dated a year before her death. He doesn't see me anymore. He just exists beside me. I wonder how long I can fake this before he notices I've already left. It was an emotional weapon, designed not to intimidate but to undermine, to make me question everything again. It almost worked. Almost. I showed it to Denise. She filed a motion with the court to restrict any future digital contact. But we both knew how slippery digital ghosts could be. Nathan had a nightmare that night. Woke up crying. Said he saw the man from the boat at the window. He meant Bradley. I held him until he calmed down, heart pounding the whole time. Checked every window, every lock, nothing. But I could feel it. He wasn't done, and part of me wondered if he ever would be. A few days later, I got a call from Kara. Unlisted number, quiet voice. "I'm okay," she said. "But you need to hear something." She sounded different, tired, frayed. "What is it?" I asked. She hesitated. "Bradley's not just running, he's building something, a new identity. I heard from someone who used to work with him in Denver. He's buying property down there under aliases, quiet transactions, no paper trail." I took a breath. "What does he want?" "I don't think it's about Nathan anymore," she said. "I think it's about you." Her voice dropped. "You embarrassed him. You took the one person he thought he could control. He's not done until he wins. Or until you lose." After she hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time. Bradley wasn't just a threat. He was a man with no face now, no accountability, a storm forming just beyond the horizon. And if Lauren was the lie that wrecked my marriage, Bradley was the monster hiding behind it, waiting for the dust to settle. But this time, I wasn't running. I wasn't afraid of dying anymore. That part of me, the man who walked on eggshells, who second-guessed every decision, he didn't exist now. I was afraid of losing Nathan. That was the one fear I hadn't outrun. Everything else, the hearings, the lawyers, the fake deaths and staged stories, those had been battles. But Bradley wasn't a battle. He was the war. And he was circling. I didn't tell Nathan about the photo or the email. I didn't want him living with shadows like I did. But he felt something. Kids always do. He started checking the front door each night before bed. Started asking questions again. Do bad people come back? Is mommy still mad? Is the man from the boat still alive? I didn't lie. I just bent the truth. They can't come here, bud, I said. We're safe, and I'm here. He always nodded, but I saw the worry linger in his eyes. Denise pushed for federal charges to be opened against Bradley, arguing he'd aided Lauren's escape, falsified documents, and evaded authorities. The feds were slow to respond. No direct location, no public crime, just whispers, just threats. So we flipped the script. Milo helped me draft a public letter. A father's story, mine. It hit the local press first, then regional. The story of a man whose wife faked her death, kidnapped his son, and was brought to justice. I never mentioned Bradley by name, but I didn't have to. The story was a flare in the night, and it worked. 3 days later, I got another message, this time through a private forum Milo monitored. A burner account, no photo, no threats, just a sentence. Tell your son I never meant to hurt him, just the man who failed him. Bradley. It wasn't remorse, it was ego. He wanted me to know he was watching, that this was still his game. I called Kara. She picked up, quiet but steady. I saw the article. Good, I said. It stirred the right demons. She hesitated. You really ready for this to end? I was ready the moment Lauren disappeared. I can give you something, she said. A number. One he used when we were young. It's old, but it might ping something. She sent it to Milo. That night, Milo got a hit. The number was linked to a private real estate deal in New Mexico. Desert acreage. Quiet. Off-grid. He'd bought land. Milo said, he's building a place no one can touch, a place to vanish, or to bring someone he wants to disappear with. We didn't wait. I took time off work, packed light, left Nathan with Denise's trusted friend, a social worker licensed for temporary guardianship. I didn't tell him I was leaving. Just said I was going on a short trip for work. I couldn't risk him thinking I'd disappeared like she did. New Mexico was endless in its silence. Long stretches of road, scrubland, mountains that stared without blinking. The land parcel was miles from the nearest gas station. No gates, no signs. But there was a structure, half-built, cabin style. Basic security cameras and motion sensors Milo disabled remotely. We waited until nightfall, then approached. No lights, no sound. I stepped through the door with Milo behind me, and there he was, Bradley Monroe, sitting on a worn leather chair like he'd been expecting us. His hair was longer, his face thinner, but the smile, still smug, still poisoned with entitlement. "I thought it'd be you," he said. Eventually. I didn't speak, just stared. He gestured around the empty room. This was going to be her place, our fresh start. She didn't want to run anymore. She wanted to live. "You mean hide?" I said. He shrugged. "Depends on the view. You used her." "She used me first," he said. "I just made the best of it, like I always do." "What do you want, Bradley?" I asked. "Why keep showing up in shadows? Why send photos and quotes like some second-rate villain?" He looked at me for a long time, then said, "Because I wanted to see what kind of man could survive her." And then, "I was betting you wouldn't." Milo stepped forward. "This is over." Bradley stood, hands up, calm. "I'm unarmed. I've got no warrants in this state. I haven't broken a single law since Charleston. But you've threatened a child," I said. "And a father." He smiled. "No, I've reminded you what it costs to lose. That's not a crime. That's life." Milo made the call. Agents were already en route. As they cuffed him and read his rights, he looked at me one last time. "I didn't take your son," he said. "I just made her believe you didn't deserve him." And that was the final lie. Because no matter what Lauren believed, Nathan came back, and I would never let him go again. When I walked through the front door again, Nathan was building a spaceship out of cereal boxes. He didn't say anything at first. Just looked up, smiled faintly, and kept cutting the flaps with plastic scissors. Then, "Did you do what you had to do?" I crouched beside him. "Yeah, it's done." He nodded like he understood more than a child his age should. Then he handed me a roll of tape and said, "You can help with the engines." That night, I didn't check the windows, didn't pace the hallway, didn't sit with the TV on mute waiting for something to go wrong. I slept. In the morning, Denise called. "Bradley's being held in federal custody in Albuquerque," she said. "They're stacking charges. Fraud, identity tampering, accomplice to abduction." "Will he flip?" I asked. "Already is," she said. "He's offering full cooperation against Lauren to reduce sentencing." Of course he was. The moment the lights came on, Bradley turned from monster to mouse. But his confession, recorded and verified, was the final nail. In it, he outlined the plan, how Lauren had wanted out for over a year, how she'd manipulated both of them, how he knew about the staged accident, the fake documents, the offshore accounts. "She was always planning an ending," he said in the tape. "She just wanted to be the one writing it." Denise filed the new evidence with the district attorney. Lauren's defense team didn't even try to fight it. They offered a plea deal within 48 hours. 10 years minimum. No parole for at least 5. No contact with Nathan ever again. Full admission of guilt in exchange for avoiding a public trial. I sat on the back porch, phone in hand, staring at the offer. Milo said, "You want the trial. You want the world to see what she did." Denise said, "But you need peace more than vengeance." They were both right. In the end, I signed the agreement. Letting go of the trial didn't mean letting go of the truth. It just meant I wasn't going to let her take another year of my life through courtrooms and headlines. Lauren pled guilty the next morning. She never looked back, never asked to see Nathan. Maybe she knew it was already too late. In the weeks that followed, the silence was strange. Not empty, just unfamiliar. No calls, no threats, no subpoenas, just days, real ones. Nathan returned to school. He made friends again. We bought a used bike. He fell twice and laughed both times. And slowly, I found myself breathing differently. Not with fear, but with purpose. I started journaling. Denise suggested it. She said trauma can fester in quiet, that if I didn't let it out, it would rot something inside me. So I wrote. About Lauren, about the cracks I didn't see, about the man I was before all of this. But mostly I wrote about Nathan, about what it meant to look him in the eyes, and know that despite everything, despite being lied to, moved around, called by a different name, he chose to trust again, to love again. One night, he asked me something that stopped my heart. If Mommy gets out, will she come for me? I swallowed the lump in my throat. No, I said. She won't. How do you know? Because I won't let her. He thought for a long second, then nodded. Okay. Just like that. The next morning he drew a picture, me and him standing under a crooked tree with a crooked house behind us. It was messy, scribbled, imperfect, but it was ours. I taped it to the fridge. Spring came late that year. The snow took its time melting off the rooftops, and for weeks the ground stayed muddy and unsure, as if the world itself wasn't ready to let go of winter. I understood that feeling, but eventually the ice gave way. And one morning, Nathan ran through the back door with grass stains on his knees and a rock in his hand shaped like a heart. He held it out to me like it was treasure. And in a way, it was. The phone call came the next afternoon. A state official, calm voice, professional tone. Lauren had been transferred to a minimum security facility upstate. Behavioral compliance. No incidents. She'd requested to speak to me. Not through lawyers, not in writing, a direct call. I told them no. There was nothing left to say. I'd spent too long begging for answers that wouldn't heal me, chasing justice that looked too much like revenge. And honestly, I didn't care what she thought anymore. That was the real victory. 3 months later, I took Nathan on a trip. Just the two of us. No lawyers, no bodyguards, just a roadmap and time. We didn't go far, just a few towns over, a cabin near a lake where the water was still cold enough to make you shiver when you dipped your feet in. He caught his first fish. I burned the first few pancakes. We talked about superheroes and space stations, and when the fireflies came out at night, he asked me a question I didn't expect. Do you think Mommy loved me? I didn't flinch. I think she did, I said. But I think she forgot what love is supposed to look like. He was quiet a moment. Then, I don't forget. And I believed him. When we came back, things were different, but only in the best ways. Nathan stopped checking the locks. He started asking to invite friends over. He drew more. He laughed louder. We weren't healed, not completely, maybe never fully, but we weren't bleeding anymore. I framed that old drawing, the one he'd made of the two of us under the crooked tree. Hung it above the kitchen table. One night I caught him staring at it. He looked over and asked, "What happened to the house in that picture?" I smiled. "It's still being built." Milo eventually moved out of state. Said the city was too slow now. Said he needed something faster, louder. He left me a bottle of bourbon and a thumb drive. "Just in case," he said. "Of anything." I never opened it. Denise took a promotion and started training young attorneys on complex custody law. We still talk, mostly about Nathan, sometimes about nothing at all. Kara sent one last message, a single sentence. He never scared me as much as she did. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Some stories don't need a sequel. Nathan turns 7 next week. We're baking a cake together, his idea. Chocolate and strawberries. He wants to wear a cape while he blows out the candles. Says he's saving the world, one wish at a time. I believe him. Because if he can come out of all of this still believing in magic, then maybe I can start believing in peace. We still talk about her sometimes, briefly, quietly, not as a villain, not even as a mother, just as part of the story, because that's all she is now, a chapter, and we've already turned the page.